Jesus said to his disciples, "In those days, after the time of distress, the sun will be darkened, the moon will lose its brightness, the stars will come falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds, with great power and glory. Then too, he will send the angels to gather his chosen from the four winds, from the ends of the world to the ends of heaven. Take the fig tree as a parable. As soon as its twigs grow supple and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. So with you, when you see these things happening, know that he is near, at the very gates. I tell you solemnly, before this generation has passed away, all these things will have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But as for that day or hour, nobody knows it, neither the angels of heaven nor the Son, no one but the Father." Do you remember the old Kit Kat advert? The one with the photographer and the pandas at the zoo? Photographer sits there day and night, rain and shine, ready to get a picture of the new exhibit at the zoo, the new pandas. But there's not a sign of them. And eventually he sits down, turns his back on the enclosure, and pours himself a cup of tea from a flask and has the Kit Kat. Have a break, have a Kit Kat, the advert says. And while he's drinking his tea and eating his biscuit, the two pandas come out on roller skates. They skate around their enclosure, they do cartwheels, they flip, they do somersaults. And just as he's about to put his flask away and continue his vigil, then the pandas disappear back into their cave. And he sits there, poised, ready to take a picture, should they ever appear. Got a great deal of sympathy for that poor old photographer. I know what that feels like. In his teaching, Jesus uses the imagery of his day. Images of the end of the world, of great destruction, of lightning and eclipses and clouds covering the world, stars falling from the skies. They're images taken from the Old Testament. It's images of the end of the world and of judgment that would be familiar to the people that Jesus was talking to. But they're not that familiar to us, are they? And I think we can be distracted by them. We can start identifying volcanoes in Las Palmas and wars here and there with the end of the world. But that's not what it's about. I wonder how much of that gospel that we've just listened to is message, and how much of it is imagery, and imagery that we're unfamiliar with, that don't help us get the point that Jesus is making, but might have helped in his own day. My parents used to talk about kids disappearing from the streets being empty at 7:15 on a weekday evening, because everyone had rushed home to listen to the next thrilling adventure of Dick Barton, Special Agent. It's on the radio, and they were only short, they were 15 minutes, but kids loved them, people loved them, and they listened to them intently. They didn't want to miss anything. But if I started repeating some of the stories from them, stories about Snowy White and Jock Anderson, the names just wouldn't mean anything to you. Not to anyone who's under 80 anyway. Similarly with the images that Jesus used. They're images that carried a particular meaning to the people that Jesus spoke to directly. But much of that meaning is lost on us. And maybe we need to lose some of the imagery, because not only does it not help, It distracts. It kind of leads us to identify the judgment that Jesus is talking about with the end of the world, and to look for signs of great destruction and think, is this it? Is this the judgment? And I'm not sure that that's how Jesus intended us to interpret his message, his teaching. It's not about looking for signs that things are coming to an end and then start to prepare to try and get things in order. No, it's to remember that there is a judgment and we don't know when it's coming, but not to be fearful of it. And I think that's my problem with a lot of the images that Jesus uses. They talk about dark times that we should be frightened of, destruction and war and violence. They do kind of engender feelings of fear, don't they? But I don't think that fear is what Jesus is aiming for. He's not encouraging us to look for the signs of the end so that we're not caught out, so that we start to get ready for it. He's just reminding us gently that there is a judgment and that the best way to be prepared for it is to live each moment as best we can. That's what the gospel's really about. Not about preparing for some eventuality in time, some future event, even if we know not when it may come, but rather live each moment as best we can. The kingdom is already here. We are already subjects of it. Live for it to the very best of our ability, each moment of our lives.